Welcome to Diversity, a vibrant podcast brought to you by the Confederation of Indian Industry and Avtar, celebrating 25 years of powering workplace cultures. In this series, a fortnightly one, we are going to be meeting, interacting, and exchanging thoughts with some amazing professionals, individuals, people whose belief in the power of culture actually has seen them do some amazing work. In today's episode of Diversity, I'm delighted to bring to you Pratik Mehta, CHRO at Mahindra Susten and Teqo. Pratik, wonderful to have you with us here on the show. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here and really excited about this conversation.
Thank you, Pratik. Pratik, we were going through your profile. We do a bit of research. And I was really taken, aback by the extent of learning that you've done. You have, in your professional journey, which by the way, very interestingly, you have begun with an engineering degree, okay, from the University of Mumbai, then gone on to London School of Economics, where you have pivoted into HR. And then, of course, it's been a long series of empowering yourself, equipping yourself. There's the Sumeda's, Academy for Human Context Work. There's the ISABs, very interesting, and we must talk about it. There's, of course, what you've done with the International Transactional Analysis Association. There's the whole neuro-linguistic programming work that you've done, topped by the Harvard Business School program via the Mahindra Universe. I wanted to ask you, have you always been a precocious child, Pratik? Have you been a class topper in school and so on and so forth? Tell us a little bit about that.
So before I tell you a little bit about that and what I haven't put up on the LinkedIn profile is I'm also a part qualified chartered accountant. Uh, but we will come to that when we come to that. Was I a precocious child when I was growing up? I think my mother will be best placed to answer that. But the reality is, I don't think I was. I got diagnosed with dyslexia and a speech disability um, somewhere in my second or third standard. Uh, and I don't think my parents fully understood what that really means. I mean, they understood the speech disability part of it because I have a stutter. I continue to have a stutter even today. But I don't think they fully understood what dyslexia really means. So I think for the longest part of my early years, I was actually in the top five from the behind. So in a class of 45 students, I'd probably be ranked number 35 or 30 or 27 or 42 or whatever else. So what changed for me really was in my ninth standard. I ended up meeting with a teacher, Professor Anita Prasad. She was my tuition teacher. I still love her to bits. What she did was she taught me how to learn. And I think there's a fundamental difference there because I find it very difficult to learn like most other people do. If you put me in a classroom setting, I'm not going to be able to learn much. So I learn very differently. She taught me how to learn. And when I learned how to learn, I realized that I can pick stuff up really fast. And that sort of changed my trajectory. And it continues to sort of serve me even now in this, at this stage of my life. So what I learned when I was probably 13 or 14 years old is serving me as I'm 41 now. But had she not made the investment back then in terms of how to teach me or how to teach me how I should teach myself, I don't think I would be where I am today.
Thank you, Pratik. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I can relate to that because my son's dyslexic too. And you hit the nail on the head when you said my parents didn't know what it meant. And for the longest time, I didn't know what it meant to raise a dyslexic child and how to kind of, help him understand. And you beautifully said, how do you learn how to learn? How
Yeah.
do you, figure out what it means to absorb that knowledge? And, it's quite beautiful and karmic and wonderful to see how you then became the head of Mahindra Leadership University, teaching so many people how to learn, teaching so many people, what it means to probably figure out where you are lacking and where that input needs to go, which is very specific. I mean, that's just simply incredible. So this move from being unsure of yourself, then figuring out how you learn and making that thing clear in your mind, then making a mistake in a manner of speaking by getting into engineering, and then pivoting into something else. With this kind of a background, how did it come naturally to you to be a consultant, to actually advise others?
So, okay, so let's take a step back, right? When I moved out of LSE, when I finished my education in LSE, I needed a job because my dad had paid a fair sum of money to actually put me through school, and I needed to pay him back, or rather, I wanted to pay him back. And I started applying to various places, and I think I got rejected by maybe 25, 26 companies. Eventually, KPMG selected me, and the place which I got selected in, the department rather I got selected in, was tax.
Oh,
Okay, so I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll take it up. I need the money. I mean, I'm being very real in this conversation. I needed the money. I mean, I have a house to run. You can't, at that stage of your career, you can't be picky and choosy. You have to be practical. So I took that job up. Um, and KPMG said that, look, we would love to have you as part of our team, but we need you to also be a chartered accountant, and we'll pay for your tax degree. And that's how CA happened, by the way. Okay. And because I'd started to like studying, I was like, yeah, great. I'd love to learn more. So here is a great firm who's ready to invest behind me and teach me something. And I got a chance to learn CA. I did want to be into consulting right out of LSE. I did want to get into consulting. And I never looked at consulting as a means to sort of advise other people. Look, I was too young at that time to understand that consulting is advising people. For me, it was more around problem solving.
ah, nice.
That there is a complex problem and I have the ability to solve for it. And I'd love to learn how to solve it. Okay. And that was of the few things I enjoyed out of my entire engineering experience. One of those things was around problem solving, right? And I was like, can I bring it? Can I make that a profession for myself? And that's how this whole pull towards consulting happened. When I started my career in tax, I was like, it's fine. A couple of years in tax is not going to put me back in my career. It's a great firm to be a part of, and I can always request them to make the transition happen for me from tax into consulting, and that's what KPMG did. I mean, the sort of firm it is, and I still have such extraordinary fond memories of that firm.
I can imagine.
I reached out to them a couple of years later and said that, look, guys, my dad is not well. I need to get back to India. Can you make it happen for me? And this is right in the middle of recession. The whole Lehman Brothers fiasco and all of that had happened at that
Amazing.
time. They're like, yeah, sure, we'll make it happen for you. Do you have a team in mind? I was like, I'd love to get into people and change advisory. They're like, yeah, that's fine. The partner in London picked up the call on the partner in India, and they basically just made it happen seamlessly.
Oh,
So that's how I got my entry finally into into the world of consulting and problem solving from that point of view.
super. And this entire dabbling with entrepreneurship, which is your slide craft studio,
Yeah, yeah,
and for 2 years you've done it. And very interestingly, it's a presentation and document design firm.
yeah.
Now, I mean, I can't tell you, if I had known that such a thing existed, probably, it would have, we would have been one of your biggest customers, I guess. I truly believe everybody in consulting needs this. And I think your consulting experience would probably have told you that the most powerful way to communicate is when you're able to design this. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so it started as a thought which was around the fact that look, companies buy, well, companies get really impressed with the fancy
Yeah.
presentations which consulting firms make. Um, so, can I create a product around providing organizations the ability to create really fancy looking presentations? And can I help them create better storylines? And and that was one segment of the customer base. And then the second segment of the customer base was the consulting firms themselves. Many of the large, well-known consulting firms have their own in-house design teams, but the smaller ones don't have it. And my value proposition to them was that look, about 30 to 40% of a consultant's time is getting spent on building a presentation. Let's say you've hired someone from IIM Ahmedabad, you have paid that individual, let's say 20 lakh rupees. Okay. So you're going to spend anywhere between 7 to 10 lakh rupees annually on them making pretty looking boxes and slides. Does that make sense? And then when that sort of sinks in, they're like, shit, it doesn't make sense. We need to do something about it. I was like, hey, by the way, I have a product which I can help you with. Um, so that was the entrepreneurship experience. And it actually was an amazing ride. It was a 2 year ride which I had.
You were barely in your early 30s then.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I had
it must
this
have
whole
been from
episode.
31 or 32 or something.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, about that age. I was sitting in Bangladesh during one of my consulting assignments, and I wasn't particularly enjoying that work which I was doing at that point in time. And I asked myself this question: do I want to be doing this for the rest of my life? And I was like, no, I don't. Can we do? Can I do something about it? And this idea came to me, uh, and over WhatsApp, a friend of mine and I, we basically exchanged ideas, figured out the name of the company, and I asked her that, hey, what do you think about this idea? And she was like, yeah, go for it. And that's how this particular idea was born.
So let's get into the heart of today's discussion, which is around the topic that this podcast is really built around, which is everything relating to workplace culture, the specific focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Sure.
Now, there is a popular myth, you could call it, or you could say that's a belief amongst people like us who are in the advisory space, that different kinds of organizations approach inclusion differently. Now, for instance, you have been with a wide variety of companies, including Hay Group, which is a HR consulting company, to KPMG, to Deloitte, to Mahindra. And even in Mahindra, you were in a learning sort of a role, or a guidance to learning kind of a role. And now you are in really in the thick of things, in an old economy industry. And by old economy, I'm not saying that, there isn't innovation or other things. It's about the fact that there are products being created which serve, a class of customer who have been looking for that innovation for a very long period of time. So that is the space that you are in right now. How is inclusion? How has it been over the years? And did you actually, especially since we spoke about your own, speech disability on the beginning of this conversation, did you feel that inclusion was something that is mandatory, essential in any company? Or would you say that that was more of a cultural flavor that some companies use to kind of position themselves differently? What's your take on this, Pratik?
I think it's such a relevant question, particularly in today's time. Um, and because I have because of a set of challenges I have gone through in my early years, plus especially so in the early stages of my career. Um, so I started my career in London. You have an Indian boy in London with a speech disability. Um, I mean, I know family system or support system out there. That's almost like a recipe for disaster. Okay, and I did go through my own fair share of disasters. Um, I don't think I have felt more excluded than I have ever than the time I spent in London. And let me also say that it had nothing to do with the organization I was a part of. Okay, I think my colleagues and my peers were a wonderful bunch of people, many of whom I'm still in touch with. But it had a lot to do with the fact that uh, I didn't feel like I belonged in that environment a lot of the times. And that to me is where the genesis of inclusion is, that you have a sense of belonging to the place which you come to every day. Um, do organizations today maybe eyewash inclusion as a concept a little bit? Maybe some do. I would like to believe that a large majority of them truly believe in it. I know for a fact we believe in it. Uh, and particularly being someone who's been excluded for a very large period of my life. Um, my approach to inclusion typically is again less frameworky and more real life, in the sense that would I like to be treated that way? Okay, the question which I ask when we are trying to do something is, would I like to be treated that way? Would I have been okay being treated that way? Would I have been okay being thought of differently for not being able to speak in a particular manner, or would I have been okay uh, because I'm not able to articulate myself in a particular way, right? And when the answers to that, when you start putting yourself in those shoes and asking those questions for yourself, the, many of those answers just reveal itself, right? That no, okay, this is not the way it should be doing, or this is not the way this thing needs to happen. There's a better way to do it. There's a kinder way to do it. There's a more humane way to do it. There is a more including way to do something of this nature. And that's the way I look at it. And I think it's very, very relevant. I think it should. I would love to see a day where we don't have to focus on inclusion, because it's just part of everyone's DNA.
Absolutely.
Until that day actually comes, I do believe organizations proactively need to focus on it, and I'm very proud of the fact that we as a group focus on it with such rigor and clarity.
Pratik, you spoke about belongingness, and I think you really articulated it so well when you said, would I like to be treated this way? And that is the barometer for with which we build systems and processes and policies for everybody to follow.
Yep.
The interesting thing about belongingness is you belong in a team, which could be a small set of people, maybe about 4 or 5 of you, and within that team you feel really strongly. So it has to start with that unit. Do I even belong in this small team, in this team of maybe 5, 6 people? That's the first question. Then
Yeah.
you kind of go one level up, and you say, do I belong in this division? Then you say, do I belong in this department? Then you say, do I belong in this organization? And then you say, do I belong in this group, of which this organization is a subset?
Yep.
So this belongingness thing just kind of it just grows and swells outward. And for a leader like you, a CHRO, for you have to look at this outermost component of it, while slowly kind of influencing inward. I mean, to me that seems to be a very tough thing. How would we be able to do that? It's easy to influence at this small unit level, 4 or 5 people. You get them talking, and you realize how to belong there. But in each one of these outwardly projecting ecosystems, how do you do that, Pratik?
I don't think there is a straightforward answer to it. Um, what I would rec what I like to personally do is focus on the entire employee experience life cycle. Um, and I ask these questions, and my team sometimes gets really irritated by it, but you know, mean, I I can imagine that, right? So let me give you a very simple one. Uh, you have the concept of a health checkup, right?
Okay.
When you join an
Yes. Yeah.
organization, you're going for a medical checkup. Okay, a lot of companies do that. So here's my question: Why, if I'm the person who's given my blood samples and I've visited the center and all of it, um, why do I not have access to my reports? Have you ever asked yourself this very fundamental question? Okay, I have spent half a day in a medical center, gone through all these battery of tests, and you as an organization have said that am I physically fit or not to be a part of your company? But why don't I have access to my own reports? Okay. It starts something as simple as that, where you start asking very basic questions. Why? Why does it have to happen this way? Um, and you'll realize a lot of the times the answer doesn't exist. There is no relevant answer for why, other than, oh, because it's always happened this way. Um, and that's the opportunity for you to win change. And you say, okay, it's always happened this way, and I'm sure, and by no means do I want to discredit the past,
Yeah.
because I'm sure that the people who made the decisions at that point in time did it with the data and did it with
Absolutely.
the mindset,
Absolutely.
right? But I do want to bring it to the awareness of the people now that sure, it happened like that in the past, but have we paused for a moment to think, does it need to happen going forward? And if and is there a better way to do it? And then you start sort of applying the lens, is there a better way to do it? Like you need to have a dual lens. Why does it need to go on, and is there a better way to do it? And when you apply both those questions to any particular situation, okay, you realize that you can bring about change in a fairly polite manner.
Beautiful.
um, like I ask a very simple question at times, right? That a medical report is one of those things, right? That I do not have access to, or um, why do wh- um, why are back in the day there used to be different toilets depending upon which job grades people would be in, and I believe it's still there in quite a few companies. And I ask them why, and then you can see where I'm going with this, and then you're able to make that not happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's how you sort of approach it when you start at reshaping the experience points of employees. Okay, that's when they start believing that you're more and more inclusive. You can talk about inclusion as much as you want, and you can talk about it endlessly. But talk means nothing if it's also not backed up by relevant action.
Very true. Very true.
And people will never fully understand your intent, but people will understand how you made them feel. They will understand the impact of your actions. So rather than saying I started with a good intent, it's more important for you to start with a great set of actions and to start with focusing on how you're making people feel.
Pratik, do you really think culture by itself can be a huge competitive advantage for a company? Can workplace culture alone be this energetic, animated, change bearing agent for an organization?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a game changer. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know what I mean? You've heard so many people say that. Um, I've experienced it firsthand, both in the Mahindra ecosystem, outside of the Mahindra ecosystem. In my consulting days, I was part of both Hay Group as well as Deloitte. And when I was part of Hay Group, I think one of the things which we deeply prided in was the fact, and even in Deloitte for actually a very large period of my career out there, we never lost anyone to competition.
Mm.
It's not like we were the best paymasters always, but more often than not, we used to win vis-a-vis competition, and we never lost anyone. In the 5 years I was at Hay Group, okay, I think maybe with the exception of two people over the 5 years, we never lost anyone to say that, hey, I'm quitting Hey to go to another consulting firm.
Yeah, yeah. And for a
They're like,
consulting firm, that's a big deal, no, Pratik? Because
it's
that's
a big,
where your entire knowledge sits. And for them to
exactly.
take it and go to a competitor, and if that's prevented by culture,
Yeah,
wow.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even today, when I look at the Mahindra ecosystem, right? I look at Susten, I look at Teqo, and we are almost on a vertical growth trajectory in both of our businesses.
Mhm.
And you'll be surprised that a large percentage of my new hires are actually rehires.
Oh,
People who've left us, experienced another place, and then said, hey, look, you know what? That was a good experience, but यहाँ का culture अलग है. We want to come back in and make it happen. So the a large percentage of the people who come back, or rather who join us,
yeah.
are joining us again for a second time. Okay. Um, and that's a testament to the fact that, I mean, even if I look at my own attrition numbers today across both Susten and Teqo,
Uh-huh.
being well below industry average. And you need to understand renewables has got a very, very high attrition rate right now because of there is such a dearth of talent. But nonetheless, I believe our culture has kept a lot of our teams intact and has attracted a lot of people, has brought back home a lot of folks who had decided to part ways and try out other organizations, and we welcome back again. And I would credit our culture to that.
Mahindra Group. I mean, first of all, you have such a stylish, iconic, absolute, rock star of a leader out there who kind of, sets the tone for you right at the top. But besides that, the whole focus on building a nation, which is something that constantly comes together, when it is the Mahindra Group, and the focus on pulling up the underprivileged, on making sure that they get a better life. How do you see this happening, in the two organizations that you are CHRO at, Susten and Teqo?
So I couldn't agree more with you. Anand Mahindra, as well as Dr. Anisha, both of them are so proactive when it comes to nation building and nation first as a mindset.
Yes.
Dr. Shah was president of FICCI, just up until recently. Anand Mahindra is, iconic. I mean, you need to be living under a rock to not know what
Yeah.
the stuff for the nation.
Absolutely. Yes.
And the beauty is that this percolates down into all of our businesses. Like when somebody asks me, what do you do? My straight up answer is, I electrify India. Okay. Yes, I'm in renewables, but my job is to electrify India. Okay. Um, and I feel an immense sense of pride when I say that, right? I'm getting goosebumps even now as I say that, right? I mean, that's your job. But it's just not simply about the solar parks which you create or the plants you put out there. Um, we have programs which are focused at the bottom of the pyramid.
Mhm.
And there's a program which we are immensely proud about, for both in Susten and Teqo, and it's called the Surya Shakti program.
It's called the
Uh, Surya Shakti
Surya
program.
Shakti. Okay.
Um, these are a Surya Shakti program basically consists of a batch of 25 to 30 women who come from different walks of life, engineering, diploma holders, sometimes non-technical fields, so on and so forth. They've been educated in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, villages. Um, they are seeking to enter uh, employment,
Mhm.
but they may not have found employment in the past, or they have gone through certain life stages, very difficult life stages, and now they're trying to make themselves financially independent. Okay. And what the Surya Shakti program does, it actually trains them up in the renewable space.
Mhm.
It trains them up various various technical facets like solar PV modules, project management, design, construction, safety, quality, you name it, right? Across the entire value chain.
Okay.
And we then absorb a large majority of these women into our program, sorry, into both our organizations, and then a few of them are also working in our competitor organizations, and we are perfectly okay with that.
Cool.
But what that does is it creates jobs at the bottom of the pyramid. It brings talent into a sector which is going through an incredible amount of talent crunch. But most importantly, in my opinion, it's providing meaningful, dignified employment to our mothers, our sisters, our daughters across the nation. And it's heartening to see the stories of these women across the last few years we've been running this program. We've now empowered more than 200 women, both in Susten and Teqo put together. Our most recent batch of 26 women just graduated late last year in December,
Fabulous.
and a large majority of them have been absorbed by us itself, right? So,
Fantastic.
of course, Anand and Anish do a lot of work around nation building, but we also pride ourselves in the fact that even at Susten and Teqo, we're able to sort of make their vision come to a reality on the ground.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Lovely to hear that. And Surya Shakti, may its Shakti just keep
Yeah.
growing multifold. And here's wishing you tremendous impact on that.
Thank you so much.
We are actually going to be moving. I mean, this conversation has been so wonderful, Pratik, and the kind of absolutely genuine, frank, uh, no holds barred sharing and thoughts that you've given. We deeply cherish it. We are actually going to be moving into the rapid fire round.
So before you ask me a rapid fire question, and I've been answering a lot of your questions, I'm going to ask you one.
Sure.
Uh, you've partnered with CII for such a long time,
Nice.
and you've done such a huge amount of research with organizations across the country. We'd love to learn a little bit from you that what might be some uh, real on the ground initiatives which companies have taken from a DEI perspective, which have really brought meaningful change, right? Because, like I said at the start of this conversation, we want to do good work and we're always happy to learn. And if I have this access to you right now, then might as well take advantage of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Pratik. So research has been something that Avatar has been doing right from day one. Um, when I started Avatar, the idea that organizations would need a very powerful business case to hire, second career women or people from underprivileged sections of the society was not a thought that was very front of my mind. I kind of thought, I mean, this is the thing to do. Why wouldn't organizations do it? But then I realized exactly like how you spoke about the point of the medical reports. And somebody, who took a decision, taking the reality of that time into consideration and keeping in mind the decision factors that would have led them to say that, hey, let this not be shared with the people and let it be here for whatever reason. In such a way, I realized that organizations were not very comfortable hiring women, but even if they did hire women, the minute a woman, sort of broke their trust by taking a break in career and stepping off the workplace, they found it incredibly difficult to sell her case back to the management, back to the organizational leaders. So that was the start of Avatar's tryst with research. And we kind of, understood that the more data you put on the table
Mm.
for a leader to absorb, take decisions on, look at the enormity of it. Because data does that to you, no? Data tells you that there are that 48% of all Indian women under the age of 30 take a break in career at least once. And that runs into several hundreds of thousands of women just in the tier one cities. And if you go to tier two, tier three, that's several million more. So when you look at this data and you place it in context in front of a leader, that leader is urged to take some action upon it. and they do it at their level. So I think when we started the Best Companies for Women in India initiative, and that was this year, we'll be completing 10 years of it, a decade of it. So we kind of really understood that, to get 400, 500 organizations to participate in that, where they willingly share data so that it becomes a benchmarking exercise. And
Yeah.
then, no, they learn from competitors. They learn how, people from other industries and what inclusion means. They need that data to actually put them on the track. So that became another very interesting initiative. And one that we completed very recently is this fabulous longitudinal study called the Top Cities for Women in India.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, increasing women's workforce participation is the biggest, the most important vision of Avatar. Avatar actually exists so that India can get to a 50-50 gender balance. And this Top Cities for Women in India is a very nice initiative because that kind of goes to the top 120 cities in India. And this year we'll make it 125. And on the ground asks the women what it means to live in that city.
Wow.
Not just live, but actually pursue one career. So if I'm going to live in Ranchi, what does that mean for me? Would I be able to pursue a career in a particular field? What kind
Yeah.
of ecosystem exists there? If suppose I want to live in, Dharwad, and I'm taking a decision, either to marry somebody that's there, or to move because my organization is offering it, or because I kind of look at it as a place in which I want to settle, is that going to be a welcoming city for me? So we published that on the 8th of January, this year, 2025. That's the third edition of the top cities. And that research has now got a lot of mayors, a lot of secretaries, a lot of even CMs of certain states actually download the report, and we have the report on the site. So then we know who's downloading it. And it's very interesting to see that people are, so excited about this data make India a Viksit Bharat. So I think that's just what we do from our side. Pratik, thank you so much for asking that question.
And I know these sound like fantastic studies, and we should catch up offline just to understand the findings a little bit more. I mean, this sounds really interesting. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you, Pratik. Now over to your rapid fire questions.
Go for it. Go for it.
Your biggest learning in your professional journey so far?
Ah, do the right thing. Stand up and do the right thing. There was a time in my career when I was backed into a corner and I was asked to do something which was not the right thing, and I was not okay with that. And it eventually cost me quite a bit in terms of a lot of flack from a set of people back then. Um, and it also eventually led me to sort of part ways with that organization. Um, but I did not back down on it because I felt that what was happening was not right. It was not good for the company, and I had raised my voice around it. Uh, and in that moment in time, I felt ostracized, and I felt that was this the right thing to do? Many years later, not many years later, but a few years later, um, when I joined back into the workforce, a different set of leaders from the same organization, they had also shifted out, right? They welcomed me with open arms, and they said that, look, I think that was one of the bravest things which anyone has done, and we're so proud to have you back. Um, and I'm so glad I took that stand that I did. So I know it's scary to do the right thing, and oftentimes courage shows up as fear. When someone asks me how do you define courage, my definition of courage is not to be is not to be I mean is the ability to display action in the face of fear. It's not the absence of fear, but it's action in the face of fear. uh, and I encourage people to do the right thing.
Super.
I always tell my teams out here that whatever it is, do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Wonderful. Fabulous. How would you describe your personal leadership style?
Uh, my personal leadership style is outcomes driven.
Is what?
Uh, Outcomes driven. Okay. I'm very outcome focused as a person. Sometimes it's to my benefit, sometimes it's to my disadvantage. My team members and colleagues will sometimes tell me, Pratik, can you be a little bit more patient at times? Uh, and I tell them, look, I'm doing my best to be patient. Um, and if you find me impatient, can you just let me know that I'm being impatient about it? I need a bit more time. And but yeah, my leadership style is outcomes driven.
Super.
Um, I do tell my colleagues family first. I practice that above all else, and I also tell them to practice it. And what it means when I say family first is work can happen and work will continue to happen. There is no dearth of work. Okay, um, but your family is the most important part of your entire life, not your work. So if your family needs you, then you show up for them first,
Totally.
and we got your back. Don't worry, right? You sort out whatever has to be sorted out. The job is still there for you. The work will get done. Don't worry about it. Focus on the family, uh, and and that's something which I very firmly believe in as well.
Fantastic. Now, the last rapid fire round question to you.
Yeah.
Your favorite childhood memory?
My favorite childhood memory is one where, and it's not as much as a memory because it even happens till now. But in Gujaratis, we have a concept of a Sunday lunch, and my mother makes this particular sabzi. It is called gathiyanu shak.
Okay.
Gathiyanu shak with white rice in huge quantities. Okay. On a Sunday afternoon lunch, followed by sleeping in our lap.
Um,
And that's a perfect Sunday for me, and that's a perfect memory for me. And of course, along with that, Gandhian shak and white rice is shira, or halwa as we call it in North
yeah,
India as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Yes.
Yes, those three things is heaven when my mom
You're
makes it.
making my mouth water now. Yeah.
Yeah. So when my mom makes it for me, it's the best thing out there, and we continue to do this even till now. Not every Sunday because I can't eat that much as I used to earlier, but it's the most precious memory which I have, and it's the most precious time which I get to spend with my family.
Wonderful is that. Thank you. Thank you, Pratik. Oh, this has been such a gorgeous conversation. And
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's been an absolute privilege to have this conversation, and best of luck to you for this you know uh, for this series of episodes.
yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pratik. And here's wishing you tremendous impact,
Thank you,
tremendous outcomes, great leadership, and truly leaving a mark entirely yours on the world. Thank you so much.
thank you, appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. So, folks, that kind of brings us to the end of this episode of Diversity. And, just like it inspired me, it enlightened me, I'm sure it would have done the same to you. Stay tuned as we bring you more such conversations with incredible leaders who have these no holds barred chats with all of us. Thank you and stay tuned.